Oxyotl is sad. His home is a wasteland and he's sick of it. He's had enough. It's dark, it smells funny, there's a fire in the distance everywhere you look, and the people are just weird and creepy.
You wanna buy a rake?
Why doesn't this man have any teeth? So he's decided enough is enough. He's rallied his skink bros and they've decided to get the hell out of here. It's time to escape from Scotland.
So, no, that's not Scotland, that's the Southern Chaos Waste.
Hey?
Yeah.
Oh, that's why the people here are less angry and violent. We're not in Scotland. So the skink bros are getting out and they're going back home to Lustria, with the goal to retake the entire continent in the name of the Lizardmen, from the Capes down south all the way to the Isthmus of Lustria up north. And we will achieve this via the power of skink. Red-crested skinks, stalker skinks, and most importantly, chameleon skinks. Why are they the most important, I hear you cry? Well, it should be obvious unless you're a fucking noob. They're wearing a toad as a hat. So we'll take all these skinks, but also allow ourselves anything ridden by skinks, such as these pestilens. They've got skinks on them, so they're okay. These feral ones, though, they don't have any skinks, they're not okay. And we'll be doing this campaign on legendary difficulty with very hard battles. So we begin our campaign in Scotland, the Southern Chaos Wastes, and we've got a couple of pestilens to get rid of first of all. We also get the skink Oracle Hero, who of course we're okay to use, and I'm going to grab some blessed skink javelins. So we head on into our first battle against not the simplest army to deal with. There's a Demon Prince Lord and some Bloodletters who will definitely chew our skinks up. We use some ambush and skirmish tactics to draw them into chasing us while we just blast them in the face running away, and in the back with javelins from any available angles. And then it was just a case of focus firing down the Lord and the Chaos Warriors. With that done, we can now push on to our first settlement, take a hold of that, put skill points into buffing up skinks, obviously, and getting ourselves a new skink hero to act as our scout, who we've given a sort of mobster name, Jimmy the Eyes. From there, we grab the final region to complete this province. I then deal with a nearby Chaos army that's randomly appeared due to Oxyotl's campaign mechanics. This gives us some XP and money and stuff, so can't complain too much. I then start building a force to get ready to head north into Lustria, and then when checking out the rights, I notice, hey look, some pretty pictures of dinosaurs. I'd like a blessed solar engine, give it to me. I thought this would just add those blessed units to my pool, but I then realized it gives you a massive army of feral dinosaurs, which you have to pay 15 grand for, and then the upkeep as well. So then I've got this army I'm not supposed to be using, and I'm running out of money fast because I'm now 2.5 grand in debt, so I just did what any rational person would do with an unwanted herd of dinosaurs. I starved them for a week and then kamikazed them into an elven colony. I then took the Citadel of Dusk, which I didn't really need that army for, and over the turn it got caught in force march, it got attacked. I just took the auto-resolve not to actually use it, and it didn't really do that much anyway. Although it did allow us to scare this elven army right into the corner, where we got after them. Now, they do have a fairly sizable army, although the spearmen are a bit beaten up from fighting the previous army, but we're coming in with a big flank of our sneaky boys, looking to make a kind of elven sandwich, attacking them from both sides, ideally just pinning them down from the front while our chameleon boys get in behind them, making sure those archers don't get settled to fire, and this was a quick one. I then moved up to take the final settlement and eradicate the elves from Lustria to the enjoyment of everyone ever. So we now have a foothold on our homeland to start pushing north, and as far as other Lizardmen factions, I'm going to let them stay here too, of course. It's their home as well. Now throughout this campaign, I'm going to be using this right, which I'm actually going to read what it does before I click it this time, and I just want to get the 250 spawning sequence so I can get some of those blessed units, namely those blessed pestilens solar engines to add a nice bit of artillery power to my army. And over the turns, pretty nicely timed, Lord Skrolk declares war on us, which is absolutely fine because we gotta go north through him anyway. So we start to scope the Skaven out to see what they're up to find them besieging one of our Lizardmen bros here with a few armies, so we get on with heading that way, taking a settlement along the way. I then recruit myself a second Lord, Gecko, whose name I decide to upgrade to a shit mumble rapper, calling him Lil Gecko. And his name must be so annoying that the rats have decided to attack him, even though it's a pretty suicidal situation for them. I do fight this one just to make sure the missile units don't get to do anything, which they probably would in auto-resolve. So we beat that army down, run it down to kill it off, only to find more rat stacks in the vicinity, but those lizard bros are still holding on. I try to enlist the help of Tehenuin and get him to do something, trying to drag him into the wars, but he doesn't want anything to do with me at the moment. Over the turn, I get an underway interception on one crappy army, so I deal with that. I'm mostly trying to rout these units off because their leadership is so low, damaging them with missiles as much as I can, and then just charging around my bigger beasties to try and terror rout them. Now winning that one was easy enough, but then the Skaven came at us with 3 stacks and I thought it was time to get out of there. It looks like we managed to draw the armies away from besieging these lizard boys, and they lived on as a beacon of hope and resistance to show what you could do if you just stand up to your oppressors. So yeah, they were dead on the next turn, and then the flaming scribes declared war on me, which meant my starting province was probably going away now. Balls! Over the turn, one suicidal rat army comes after me, we deal with that, and then I push to try and take the southern sentinel settlement back for them, but besieging over the turn, two more skaven armies appear from somewhere, and thus we're a little bit outnumbered. So we fall back, but then I get a little gecko on the old siege trick to besiege the settlement while those two armies are stuck inside there now, which means Oxyotl can go and deal with the other two outside. And apparently it's going to be a close victory, which is a load of nonsense because their entire army is pretty much missiles. And while they might get one good volley off, that'll be about it, because once we get into melee with them, they're done. I then get after the other army there, a full stack mostly comprised of crappy rats. And I fight this battle because I don't want to lose that one unit in the auto-resolve, and it happens to be a choke point battle. I deal with half of their army on one side that charges forward, flanking around, shooting them in the back, breaking their leadership, and the other half of their army is just running around their hills chasing my pterodons. So needless to say, this was a pretty comfortable victory. From there, I proceeded on to get after the settlement itself, going in for a siege. A Pyrrhic victory predicted, so I fought this one, and luckily there were lots of holes in the walls to make life easier, but I did come in from many angles, assaulting these rats from all over the place because they did have a numbers advantage here, so we want to spread them out so they don't form up big choke points and just get us blasted by towers. I tried to capture their points to stop that, and even Oxyottle went after Lord Skrolk himself, and overall it didn't take us too long to push our way through the settlement, just capturing it piece by piece as one should in a siege. With that, we managed to take that settlement without losing too much in the process, and I decided to make this settlement one of my silent sanctums so I could teleport around there and get some buildings for buffs. From there I continued dismantling the Skaven Empire, but their armies were still coming, and they were coming back for Southern Sentinels once again, and this time we were the besieged ones, and their armies were actually no jokes. A lot of storm vermin, rattling gunners, rat ogres. This was gonna be a little tougher. My plan here was to man the walls to get the towers firing on all the different incoming armies from different sides, do as much damage as we can on their approach, and then pull all of these units on the walls back to the center where we would make our stand. I was also building all the towers possible around the victory objective to make use of and to fall back to if we needed to. We had some nice uphill choke points which we used to absolutely nail the incoming early rat ogres with javelins. Our blessed javelins were doing a lot of good work as well, and Lord Skrolk himself was making his way up. He had pretty much full health, but quite literally in the blink of an eye, he was there, and then suddenly he was gone. I'm not quite sure what happened. He seemed to get instantly disintegrated by the blessed javelins, so fucking sweet. Why are these Skavens suddenly made of clouds? Or did they have some smoke grenades that went off? Why are they so foggy? What's happening? Fog rats everywhere. Over on the other side of our central position, enemy units were arriving, but it was nothing our flanking javelins, Pestilens, and Comet of Cassandra couldn't handle. So we just held at our defensive position in the center. There were some rattling gunners we had to take care of, so we pushed out to get after those in melee. But we could wear most of the units down before they reached us with our javelins, with our magic, with our towers. So we were able to hold pretty comfortably in this central area without losing too much in the process. And with that, we got some big Skaven armies dealt with, and surely we were free to push on and finish off the rats now. But oh no, all sorts of weird shit started happening. The Purple Hand unusual location thing was going off. I wasn't entirely sure what this exactly did. I hadn't really experienced it before. I demanded reassurances that they fuck right off, but over the turn I got the same thing in a different location, and then over the turn I got again the same thing in a different fucking location, and then suddenly over another turn one of my settlements was there and then it wasn't. And also somewhere along the way the flaming scribes had finally come to take my starting settlement. Oxyotl's army was afflicted with mutagenic energies for a few turns, which meant we were taking unavoidable attrition, and the Southern Sentinels, who I tried to save just now, have rebelled and brought a massive army to try and reclaim Southern Sentinels. Fantastic. I just autoed this and took it on the chin. So after a while, maybe I could get to pushing on the rats again. I started to scout them out to see what armies they had. Of course, they've rebuilt a bunch now. I caught a pretty strong Skrolk army and got into that, looking to get a big flank on with my chameleon skinks, who were getting pretty powerful now. All the buffs and stuff, my missile units were getting pretty strong, as we found out earlier with disintegrating Skrolk. Largely, we just used our stealth to sneak up and flank around and get behind all these units, get after those missile units. My chameleon skinks were good enough in melee to beat up the rat ranged units. So yeah, my army was starting to get pretty powerful, pretty strong, our missiles doing a lot of the work. As you can see here by the fact we've barely taken any damage. And then finally we can continue our assault on the Skaven. We've had to delay it for about 10 turns dealing with all the other crap, so we're making progress again. I managed to catch another big rat army which had a lot of missiles in an ambush, and needless to say, we absolutely ruined their lives from all directions. Some of them tried to make a getaway, but they got a swift bombing. So the Skaven armies kept coming, but we were able to keep knocking them out of the park, smashing our way through their territory slowly but surely. We had a few battles with them along the way, but we were so juiced up out of our minds now, they just couldn't stop us at all. I had all the skink related combat techs, I had Oxyotl skill points with spawnkin. So with the Skaven on their last legs, we took those legs, chopped them off and made them into tasty rat thigh burgers. And with that, Clan Pestilens was done and we all had gonorrhea. Because that's what happens when you eat infected pestilens rat meat, you idiots! Now at this point, we controlled a nice chunk of Lustria between me, Tehenuin, and even Gorok is still there. Although he was at war with the biggest problem of this region, Skulltaker, who did have a lot of armies around for us to deal with, and Gorok did lose one of his main settlements in Quitza, which I very kindly took back over for him and gave back to him because I did want to keep him alive with a fair empire so that he could rule alongside me with the other Lizardmen factions. But long story short, it was a pretty damn big struggle. He kept losing his settlements, he did fight back sometimes, he beat up one of the armies at least once. He swiftly lost Quitza, which I had to go and get back for him, although I wasn't at war with Skulltaker until this point, so I was doing him a pretty big favor here. So we took the power of Skinky Missile to the Corn Boys, those blessed javelins doing a lot of work for us. I had a triple Pestilens solar engine set up to deal with single entities like the Soul Grinders, and then it was just a lot of skirmishing with the javelins, with the chameleon skinks, just wearing down all this strong Corn infantry, and once again we were able to put away the enemy army without losing too much ourselves. And now I decided it was time to go after Itza. If anything's gonna make Gorok stay alive, it's hopefully Itza, his home settlement. By the time I got up there though and was ready to attack, Skulltaker had come and taken Quitza back once again, this time off me, namely because it had no garrison there yet. But eventually I made my move, got after Itza, went in for the assault. Its army wasn't too formidable, we put some holes in the walls, we got skinks up on the walls, and Bastilla stomped them into oblivion. So we claimed Itza for Gorok, gave it back to the bastard, and it looked like he was fighting back. There was a Skulltaker army that was beaten down, his army was beaten up, so he obviously had a fight, but there was no peace for Gorok as his other enemies had come to get him now, Clan Spittle that was nearby and the Vampire Coast. Nevertheless, I continued to try and save Gorok. I took another Skulltaker settlement, gave it to Gorok again. I started to build a new army as well as recruit a bigger army for Lil Gecko so we could get some proper forces on the go. Meanwhile, I had joined Gorok's war against the Skaven to try and help get rid of them, but I suffered for it. But sadly, my efforts were in vain, and no amount of help could save Gorok from his ultimate fate of destruction. Sigh. You know what they say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it not be a useless. Cunning and aggression is what was needed now, so I pushed on to Quitza to reclaim that. But retaliation was swift as an army with a whole bunch of soul grinders came after us. So our solar engines had a fair bit of work to do, but it was no problem, especially with the help of the javelins deleting everything else. And our ranged power was mostly taking out the enemy army before they could even reach us. So while this army looked imposing, it was in fact a good joke. At this point, while we were winning these battles, we were still just stuck in this same position in the middle of Lustria. Over the other side of our kingdom, I had been moving up my other two little armies, but ran into some Skaven, got a little too close, got myself ambushed, Lil Gecko got beaten the shit out of, and then my other new little army got ambushed, but this one wasn't so much of a worry. Largely because in this army, I'd recruited the Shredder of fucking Lustria, and the Thunderous one. Now the enemy army didn't start right on top of us, so we had time to get to the escape if we wanted to, but there was two Skaven armies here that I had a chance to deal with, and well, I didn't think they'd really be able to stop me. So we headed on into the trees to meet the Skaven, where we swiftly stomped them to absolute tiny little rat pieces, and we had that first army mostly dealt with by the time the second army arrived. And with good use of our flying units to make sure the enemy missile units couldn't shoot down our Thunderous one or Shredder, naturally we just had a good old time stomping rats without too much damage to our own units. From here, with these rats beaten down, I brought Oxyotl over to try and help finish the job as quickly as possible. My red-crested skinks determined to die in auto-resolve, so, well, I let them. I started harassing the remaining Skaven armies here, assassinating their heroes, Jimmy the Eyes getting the job done. We also had a rebellion where Skrok's boys tried to make a comeback. The flaming scribes still around, still a problem. They'd taken my starting province and now they were coming over to try and take the rest of my stuff. Luckily, a Pyrrhic victory auto-resolve was enough to repel them here. But these annoying little testicle folk weren't done yet as they were coming back with another army to try again. So I recruited a small army there. Meanwhile, back up north, we were chasing the Skaven out of their lands. They'd taken to the ocean to their last two remaining settlements out on these islands. Jimmy the Eyes had been knocking out assassinations left, right, and center, so he ascended to become Jimmy the Eye Stabber. Over the turn, the flaming scribes made their move, coming in to besiege us at Citadel of Dusk. Let's have 'em! So their first army was the smaller of the two that had a bunch of flyers. I expected them to come and try to get my missile units on the walls, so I had the garrison Saurus there ready to deal with those. And overall, this first army didn't really do a lot, so it was now just pretty much a 1v1 with the reinforcing army, which was miles away and taking ages to come in. And when they did come in, instead of running straight ahead towards my settlement like I thought they would, they started running to the same door that the other army went to for some reason. I found this confusing, but didn't really think much of it. I also noticed that, my Saurus seemed to be controlling this wall and are pretty much the only thing on it, yet the enemy somehow controls the towers. And then I noticed that, the entire enemy army is just letting itself in through the fucking door. What? So this is why their entire army was heading for this door, because they apparently control it and can get in that way. After this battle, I went back and checked the replay to see what the dick and balls had happened here. It turned out that some of my routed skink boys had escaped out this door, opening it in the process, letting a few of the nearby Forsaken in, only half the unit though, and they proceeded to capture the point. When I saw this, I of course reacted very calmly and heartily laughed at the situation. All those little joker chaps at CA, I said. The fun of sieges never starts. Ultimately, it wasn't the worst thing in the world though, because it made their entire army run in front of the wall of my javelins and the towers. I took my cav out, my monsters out to try and keep them out there and blast them up. Although I did nearly lose this, because by the time I realized they were all sneaking in the door, they'd run up and grab the 2 victory objectives nearly, but luckily I was able to capture one of them back just in time. So we managed to survive these very Zinchian tricks, as fun as it was. Siege rework when, CA? Now though, it was time to finish off these annoying rats that have been plaguing us for a while, so we took out the remaining armies we could find, went after their settlements over on these islands, and removed their little fuzzy asses from existence. At this point, I started upgrading my second army and decided to expand on the idea of having just a Shredder of Lustria, the Thunderous one, and then a whole bunch of flyers. All the while, Skulltaker was still a problem, attacking our settlements from time to time, but eventually he made one of his last mistakes, coming after our Shredder of Lustria flyer army, which with one army full of dogs wasn't great for taking on a settlement of Oxyotl. So I took the heroic victory here and got rid of 2 of his armies, hopefully opening up the way for us to finish him off. And with his military prowess, Saito Krom became Saito Flyboy of the Jungle. Now at this point we held about half of Lustria, so we were getting there. Eventually I was starting to get more friendly with Tehenuin and maybe getting him on side, maybe even confederating him if I had to. I had been dealing with the random chaos armies that pop up as part of Oxyotl's mechanic occasionally, so that was getting me some rewards. I started now to make my way to try and finish off Skulltaker. I had to fight my way through a few of his armies that just kept on coming, and eventually I did catch Skulltaker himself in an ambush with Saito Flyboy's army and Oxyotl's army, and really we had all the tools to deal with the Khorne army, because they love a bit of melee, they want to get stuck into a melee fight. Well, all of our stuff is in the air or is a massive fucking lizard. So we shot them and bombed them from the skies as they ran desperately to try and get to their escape point, which quite comically just so happened to be, and I didn't move my reinforcements there, but it was exactly where my reinforcement armies were. So just when they felt like they were safe and they were going to escape, they were met by a hail of fire from chameleon skinks and javelins and Oxyotl himself. And we sent Skulltaker straight to Jesus. From there, his army retreated back near one of his settlements with a big army in it, but we pinned that in there, finished him off, and then took out the settlement itself. We had Skulltaker running scared. This champion of Khorne was asking for peace.
Please don't beat me up anymore.
So I did what any good bully does when their victim begs for mercy. I just kept pounding on him. I gave him a wedgie, bog flushed him and sang "You're a Gaylord" at him to the tune of Like a Virgin. Such was the way of 2005 high school kids. Things were rough and homophobic. But progress was being made. We now controlled the most of the main part of Lustria, and we had Skulltaker on his last legs. As we approached his final settlement, he came after Oxyotl's army in almost a 1v1. We used all of our tactical advantages, the high ground, to get extra missile damage and more time to fire, which allowed us to chew up a lot of their strong units before they even got anywhere near us. We still had to tangle with them a little bit, but we kept our missiles firing as much as possible, getting flanking with missiles where we could, and overall we came away in not too bad a condition, able to push on to the final settlement to get Skulltaker done. We laid siege to them. Skulltaker came begging for peace again. I said nope. He came out and attacked us, so I just took the Pyrrhic, and that was Skulltaker, the biggest challenge of the area, finally done. And about now is when everybody's favourite annoying Zeech faction came back, the Flaming Scribes, attacking one of my settlements, taking it out and razing it. So I sent down my new third army, led by local hardman Derek, but his army wasn't quite able to take on this actually pretty strong Flaming Scribes army, so I was feeling a little bit stuck at this point. But over the turn though, a stroke of luck as the Flaming Scribes actually got confederated by Kairos, who I wasn't at war with, so that army was no longer a threat. So we just shook hands with the Flaming Scribe army, reclaimed our settlement, and had a laugh with them about it down the pub. I then took the time to take out a couple of the random Chaos armies that Oxyotl's campaign mechanics had spawned again, and just as we were looking for our next step to reclaiming Lustria, the Vampire Coast declared war on us, and well, they were next then. They had quite a few armies on our northern borders, so we started to move that way to prepare for them. I started edging my armies towards theirs, wanting to set up ambushes, but the attrition was a problem, so I just encamped, and they came and met us out in the field with a triple stack and a bit. So the fight was on, or was it? Because you see, one of their reinforcing armies was coming from over here, the other one's over here in this kind of little choke point area, and their main army was split weirdly between this little cliff face, so their army was kind of broken up into two, which meant it was easy pickings for my main army. And what's more, my reinforcing army, the Flying Shredder army, came in way sooner than any of theirs, so we were there to meet them as they arrived, which meant all of their strong missile units had wings flapping all over their face as soon as they arrived. And their other reinforcing army was so bunched up in the choke point that just 1 or 2 flyer units were able to disrupt them, and then just a little bit of Shredder Illustria, a little bit of missiles, job done. And with that, a large portion of the Vampire Coast armies were out the way, so we pressed the assault and began their deconstruction, taking out all their little armies remaining around and pushing on their settlements, taking them one by one. They did get a little cheeky bringing an army over to the islands, but with a quick recruit of a lord and a blessed stegodon, it was just enough to hold off the invading force. We then pushed on to find Luther Harkon himself, the big man of the Vampire Coast. I did encircle them to bring my other armies over, but they came out and attacked us, so we had a fight on our hands. We quickly rushed up and dealt with the first little army that had some dangerous missile units in there. Their main armies were coming in as reinforcements, and I had my stalkers there ready to grenade them as they came in, and then they were going to run backwards, leading the enemy armies after them, and then we would flank them with missiles from both sides. So the plan begun with nice damage off the initial attack, and then we ran backwards, still able to attack those, so we were going to keep racking up damage. We had our triple solar engine party firing away as well, taking out those grabs. And then as planned, we let the enemy pursue us out of the forest a little bit, so we had nice clean shots and pushed in from both sides with the chameleon skinks on one side, blessed javelins on the other, so we gunned them down like nobody's business. All the while, we'd been focus firing down old Harkon, and that was pretty much the end of them. Right after we took their final settlement, Vampire Coast, done. But there was still one more evil faction to deal with, the French. Now, the French, luckily, just like in real life, are incredibly easy to conquer, so I didn't need to bring all my armies up there. I brought one down south in preparation for starting to push on the Chinese on the western side of the continent. I also started making an army of pestilens because, well, why wouldn't I? And then it was time to do my second favorite thing in the world, declare war on the French. Yes! So we went after them, ravaged their cities, ate their baguettes, shat in their berets. But oh, what's this? They're actually putting up a fight. Jesus Christ. So we played the defensive game to try and lure them over, to try and separate them from their artillery piece, the trebuchet, and then these crappy little garrison units would go down and take it out. That was the idea. But I couldn't really get them to pursue us enough to separate them, so I just had to charge in for it, and their main army started to come after us anyway. We had to take some charges on the face. We tried to use our missiles as much as possible though, and this was the first part of this battle, getting charged in the face a lot by their cav. Couldn't really pursue them, so we just took it on our little lizardy chins and hoped that the missiles would wear them down. They did have some missiles of their own which we tried to get after, so they wouldn't do too much, but overall this was just an absolute mess of a battle, a real war of attrition. It was looking pretty bleak. As you can see, the favor bar at this point is mostly theirs, but as we wore down their cav and took out their lord, our fates did change, and we came away with a Pyrrhic victory. And it turned out they were pissed, and they were coming for Oxyottle. This was actually a siege defense, but given that their army was a hell of a lot of cavalry and not a lot of infantry, I figured they were probably just going to stand outside the walls and get shot. So I did the heroic thing and pressed auto-resolve for a heroic victory. And with the fact that we didn't take much damage in that fight, and we have pretty crazy replenishment, we then pushed on. And then pushed on again. And then pushed on again. And with that final push on the French settlements, we then pushed the French out of existence. Hooray! I then wondered if Mazdamundi was still alive, so I scouted up north where he is, only to find I'd wandered into Chinatown. But hiding up right around his start position, Mazdamundi was still alive, and we were going to try our darnest to keep him that way. And so when it came down to it, Yuon Bo was the last piece of our puzzle that we needed to get rid of. We were going to push and take all this northern part up to around here, with the hope that we could get Mazdamundi to take everything above that, and then my southern armies were going to push along this western coast and come around this side. So we got on with it and began our assault. I tried to hit multiple settlements in the space of one turn, but our boy Derek couldn't quite get his task done. He tried to besiege them, they came out to fight him, so he had a fight on his hands. But you see, Derek thought of himself as a master strategist, so he employed the skink formation. What, you can't see it? Well, here's the body, here's the 2 legs, and then a little skinky tail out wide, 1 arm out front, and then the other arm up top holding a javelin like any good skink should. And then of course there's a head with the Lord as the eye. Though Derek in his infinite wisdom didn't quite plan for the massive fucking walls of fire that were tearing their way through his skinky formation. And the way this had to work is that you just move the skink formation towards the enemy and see what happens. More walls of fucking fire. That's what happens, Derek. Good one. We clapped back with a little magic of our own, but again, more fire. But we were getting there, sort of, wearing the enemy down. We were pretty much seeing if the enemy could beat us, even if we don't really try. And even though the army got whittled down, we maintained that skinky formation, sort of, and tried to chase down the missile units that were most of the problem. I did let the Lord chase them a little bit, and from this we decided it was the last time that Derek was going to command an army.
Fucking Derek.
We did manage to get the win, but at great loss. We began the assault from the southwest as well with Saito Flyboy's army, but there was a bit of resistance over here, but I was going to get Tehenuin to join this war by giving him a settlement. I also needed to get Mazdamundi to join the war so that he could take all this stuff up north, but that chubby fucktoad wasn't having it yet. So we just kept taking the settlements up north, taking the settlements down south, and Yuon Bo's empire was shrinking quickly. Although over the turn they did come after Derek, knowing his less than stellar military performance, but luckily we were able to just auto-resolve past him so he didn't actually get to control the army. Although eventually he did actually redeem himself and go and take a settlement.
Fucking Derek.
So he kept advancing through Yuon Bo's territory. He did come at us with a few armies sometimes, but it was silly things like a 3-on-1, for example. And I started to help Tehenuin out down here, taking some of these settlements and then giving them to him for a reasonable price. Now to get Mazdamundi to join my Yuon Bo war, I brought Oxyotl up north, took out this random little Slanesh faction, which is next to Mazdamundi, taking their settlement and then giving it to Mazdamundi so that he joined the war and a defensive alliance in the process. Hopefully now he'd start taking these settlements up here. Because this was the bulk of Yuon Bo's territory now up north, we've gotten rid of a lot of his territory from the main Lustria continent, and so we were going to do our part and hope that Mazdamundi would do his. And we kept on keeping on. They still had a fair few armies though in this territory, and Derek was taking settlements again. He'd found that siegecraft was actually his thing, and we managed to catch Yuon Bo himself in a siege, so I had to fight this to take my Pestilens army out for a spin, because it would be ridiculous to finish this video without actually using this army. We had revivification crystals, arcs of Sotek, and of course solar engines, so we had all the tools to stomp the infantry to oblivion and blast the damn balloons out of the sky. But of course, there were some runners that just wanted to escape and get home to their wives and children. So we made sure that couldn't happen by having our reinforcements at the escape point, gunning them down before they could even get anywhere near it. And I'm learning this video is getting darker and darker as we go. Let's just finish this one with a symbolic balloon. So Yuon Bo took a beatdown, and as we'd hoped, Mazdamundi was now making waves up north. Even Tehenuin was getting stuck in, taking out armies, taking settlements, advancing onwards. Yuon Bo then came begging for peace, to which we said, okay mate, only joking, Gundachisui. One of his armies then attacked us and swiftly regretted it. And about now we had Yuon Bo down to his last 2 settlements, Mazdamundi taking all of the north. This was it, finally. But Yuon Bo wasn't totally out of it yet. He had a small army, he was running around, he sacked a couple of my settlements, didn't take either of them though for some reason. But nevertheless we pushed on to his final 2 settlements, and for a big final battle we sent Oxyotl alone to besiege the Dark Elf settlement of the Blood Hall. We launched a multi-front attack on many sides of the settlement, putting holes in the wall on one side, straight up just charging in and attacking on the central wall of the settlement, and using our Toad Hat Extraordinarii, aka the Chameleon Skinks, to put in a stealth flank over on the left side. The gap in the wall though is where we sent most of the army to flood in over on the right side, buying a little bit of space for the javelins, an ever important unit to our army, to sneak in and do some good damage where they could. Most parts of the enemy army though was either outnumbered or outmatched all over the place, so although we pushed to get after the victory objectives, it was a matter of time before they crumbled. And with that, Yuon Bo was now out of settlements and out of luck. Largely because his last little beaten up army had a big old lizard army full of dinosaurs about to pound his nose off. But old Yuon Bo's a slippery fucker. He managed to sneak away to the ocean, but the lizard boys were hot on his trail. This was getting dramatic. And would you believe it, Yuon Bo actually managed to lose his lizard men tail, only to end up right in the grasp of guess who?
Motherfucking Derek.
Who of course made short work of Yuon Bo, and that was it. He was gone. No more Jade Court, no more anyone in Lustria. It was now fully under lizard men control. Mazdamundi controlled the north, we controlled the most of central Lustria. The one little sacred pool faction is still there, and Tehenuin had that west coast. So little old Oxyottle had done it, beginning his life in shitty old Scotland, the Chaos Wastes. He'd made a name for himself and retaken his home. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. Do consider checking out the Patreon or YouTube memberships if you wish. Otherwise, I'll see you in the future.